Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Daniela, and on this channel we do crafts, cocktails, and cooking. Today is an episode of crafting with a cocktail, so that means we have some DIYs or crafts and a specially made cocktail. I had some help with my honey with this one, and we are making a habanero fresh citrus margarita. I'm not sure if there's a better way to say that, but let's give it a try. Ooh, so, you can tell it's got the fresh citrus in it. It's got the heat from the habanero, but not so overwhelming. Really good. If you guys want to catch the recipe or the tutorial for that, keep on watching. Let's get right into our DIYs. Cheers! Alright, so we are working on some gnomes today, specifically Valentine's Day gnomes. I have not made a gnome since like Christmas of last year, and I thought these would be super cute and had some suggestions from friends. Now, when I was thinking of the body, I didn't know how I wanted to make it, and I was kind of taking a chance with the method I'm doing now, which is hot gluing 2 stacked cups together. And honestly, I love this method, and I end up using it for all 3 of the gnomes that you're going to see today. Now, this is something I did with my original gnome from Christmas last year as well, as I used this big mop head. Although, I will say it brought back some, like, PTSD of how annoying it was to, like, cut and organize these last year. But actually, it ended up being not so bad compared to one of my other ones that you'll see later, in terms of just organizing it. I think I had it down pat from last year. So I basically just cut off those strands, which are looped, onto the mop, and then I folded them in half and cut them in half, because I don't need super long strands since my 2 stacked cups aren't very tall. Now, if you wanted to make your gnome taller than this, you might have to find a different method. I was really happy with this height, and to be honest, depending on where you glue the hat and the beard, really makes all the difference of how tall your gnome is going to be, or how long the hat is versus the beard, etc. So this is my shortest of gnomes. It's the first one I'm trying, and I'm just taking a few strands at a time and hot gluing them to the cup above the lip, or the intersection of where they both the cups meet. Once I've gone all the way around the cups with my first layer, I'm going to start beefing up the front of my gnome so it's a little bit more full in the beard area. I don't worry so much about the back because you're not really going to see it, but I will show you a trick in a minute that I learned along the way so that you're not seeing a lot of exposed cup underneath. So again, I'm just taking some chunks and just overlapping what I would consider the front of my beard or the front of my gnome. Now then I realized you can still see some exposed cup underneath, so I was like, well, I could just glue some pieces directly to the cup so that even when it's like the beard or the hair is moving or shagging around, you won't really be able to see much. Now, I don't perfectly line them all up. I've got some gaps in between my little pieces there, but I would recommend doing this first before gluing on the beard itself so that you have an underlayer. And that way, again, if it's moving, you don't really notice the underneath area, and they don't have to be perfectly lined up, be perfectly lined up, words. But where am I going with this? Oh, just it definitely creates a better illusion of like the depth of the beard here. So once everything is glued, you've got your second layer, you've got that underlayer, everything's good to go, then you're going to trim it off to make sure he's nice and even. This is a little bit tricky in bulk, as you can see, so I'm kind of bunching it into my scissors and forcing it to cut. But yeah, so you're just going to kind of trim it down, make sure you're happy with the length of the beard, and then play with confetti. Just kidding, it's time to put on a hat. So I was going to use polyfill and then realized, wow, I can just use my extra chunks of my mop to fill in the hat, which turned out really well. Okay, now that we're done thinking that we're a basketball star featured in Space Jam, we're going to move on with putting our hat onto our gnome. I just kept stuffing it until I was happy with it, and then folded it over the top of the mop hairs, which again, this is when I realized my beard was a little bit short, but that's okay. I like the variety. So all 3 of the gnomes you're going to see today have some variety. None of them are made exactly the same way. Some of them have similar methods, but they all have their unique pieces to them. By the way, yes, you heard that dog bark. I don't remember which movie I was watching, but I love watching Disney movies while I craft. And cue the hot glue trigger warning of burn. Oh, Jesus Christ. If you you have some of those little silicone handy finger protectors, you should definitely use those. I don't know where mine are because my craft room is a giant mess, which is why I'm crafting in my living room. Anyways, thought you might enjoy my nice little burn there. I sure didn't. But anyways, you're going to finish gluing that all together, and then this is the best part. I found these little kid glasses at Dollar Tree. By the way, all of the materials today are from Dollar Tree, which is super cool, super affordable. But I fell in love with these funny little heart-shaped kid-sized glasses and was like, I totally need to put those on a gnome. So I just I took off all the tags and everything and found a place where I liked it, where it's meeting the hat and the beard at the same time. And then I hot glued it in place in several places because I was a little bit afraid of it coming off. So if you do this, make sure to hot glue it in at least 2 or 3 places just to make sure. Now, I ended up taking this pink little poofy pom-pom and gluing that on as the nose. I'm still in debate if I want to change it to some of the glitter balls that you'll see in my later gnomes. The other two both have like a glitter ball for a nose, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Now, I wanted this to be kind of like a hipster gnome, so I'm actually just kind of wrinkling the sock and then gluing it together so it looks a little bit more baggy, which I definitely loved the vibe of. Then to add a little extra detail, I've got some little glitter hearts that are also from the Dollar Tree. These are not stickers, they're just table scatter, so they're glittery on both sides, which I think I would have glued even if they did have a sticky backside, but I'm using one pink heart and one red heart and just overlapping them onto the hat. It just felt like it needed something a little extra, and I think this is such a sweet little touch to make our little like hipster beanie gnome feel complete. Now here again I'm just wrinkling up some of the sock and just gluing it together to get the effect that I want, which I will do something similar to in another gnome as well. But that's it for this one. Let me know what you guys think. I think he's really fun and quirky and cute and perfect for Valentine's Day. Let me know at the end of this video which one of your 3 gnomes is your absolute favorite. All right, guys, you know what time it is. Let's check out today's cocktail and how we made it. So we are going to use some fresh citrus, as you can see, oranges and limes, some habaneros, some tequila. It will also involve some water and some agave, which are not shown here. Now, instead of infusing the alcohol itself this time, we are actually infusing the mixer. So I am squeezing or juicing out a bunch of oranges here. I think in the total I used 4 oranges and 4 limes, but you can make as much or as little as you'd like. I've got a handy dandy little hand juicer thing here, which is really helpful for me and really sped up the process. But if you've got another type, that'll work totally fine. It will just be a little bit more difficult if you have to hand squeeze them. Plus, I feel like you don't get all of the citrus out, but that's okay. So anyways, just juice all of these goodies up, and don't worry about the pulp at this time. I actually really like the pulp, but my partner doesn't, so we do drain it later, so don't worry about that yet. Also, I know it doesn't seem like a lot here, but trust me, with this concentrated juice, we're going to add water to it, and it's going to fill up our whole jar so that you have enough to make more than just one drink. It just looks really low because this is just the citrus part. Once you've got all those juice, you're going to cut up your habanero peppers. I just got mine at my local grocery store. I'm not sure if they have them everywhere. Mine just happens to carry them, but I've just got 3 little guys, and I cut them up into chunks, and I take out the seeds and the stem so it's not overwhelmingly spicy, and then I just throw them into my mix. Once I've got that going for me, I am going to take some agave and swirl it in there. I will say something that I didn't do is, well, I do taste test it later, but it wasn't enough for that 1 tablespoon I added. I would recommend at least 2. So I did squeeze some in there. Now I'm adding water enough to pretty much fill my jar, and I'm going to give it a really good mix, and I'm going to let it sit for a couple of hours to really infuse all of those flavors together.
2 hours later.
So here we are, ready to strain out all the pulp and all of the other goodness in here, and we actually, our old strainer, like the smaller roundish ones, got rusted all over, so I'm using this giant one, or at least Steven's using this giant one, to get out just the juice and then squish out some of the pulp to get some of that goodness. Fun fact here, we actually had to re-record this 3 times because we kept forgetting things that we needed, so it was pretty funny going through and editing this because we had to do it so many times. Once it's all strained, you can pour it back into your original jar and then let it chill in the fridge for as long as you want till you need it. Also, if you wanted to infuse it for longer than 2 hours, you totally could. You could leave this up to overnight. It's definitely going to have more heat to it, but you could absolutely do that. Now here we are going to take a taste test.
Is it sweet enough or do you need agave?
Okay, though he did give that thumbs up, we did end up adding agave off camera, unless it was before that, I don't remember, but either way, it just needed a touch extra, and now you can assemble your drink. So you can take your tequila of choice, fill it into a margarita glass with ice, and then you're going to top it off with the habanero mixer. I'm not positive, but you could probably leave this in your fridge strained for 3 to 4 days, maybe 5. I think it'll stay good for that amount of time. You could also, of course, rim your glass with salt before adding ice or anything else. We're not big salt fans here, so we just left it as is. And that's it. All right, moving on to the next gnome DIY, starting with the same technique of creating the body, which is just hot gluing 2 paper cups with each other. I should mention that to make sure that these are paper cups, the plastic cups might melt. The original gnome I made last year was in a plastic bottle, but I did notice because of the heat of the glue gun, sometimes it seemed like it was starting to melt the plastic. So paper is key here. Once that's glued together, then I'm creating a beard out of yarn this time. You also see that funny kind of like piping type of stuff. I thought about using that but didn't end up using it. So I'm using 3 different colors of yarn. I've got a pastel pink, a white, and a red. The pastel pink and the white I got from Dollar Tree. The red one I already had, but they did have red yarn there as well. And I'm taking something small that I can wrap them all around to create the ideal size for my beard. So this is kind of like making a tassel, but I'm really just measuring out the length of my beard because I'm going to eventually cut this off here and then cut it in half again, and that will create the correct length, or at least mostly correct. So funny story here, as I'm cutting, I was like, whoa, it's hard cutting it off my book, and I didn't realize that I also cut the elastic off my poor little address book, so that was a bummer. But anyways, I'm just going to cut the tops and the bottoms so that the length of them is not the full loop, but rather half. So from like the top of the book to the bottom of the book. And that ended up being a really good size for me. I would say that it was maybe like 6 inches tall. I'm not too sure at the moment. But anyways, then I started gathering some and gluing them onto my cups just like I did the other ones. I'm trying to be a little smarter here with my scissors so I don't burn myself again. But once again, the smarter thing to do is to do that under layer first, which thankfully I remembered this time. And again, you don't have to do every single centimeter full. I just did like 2 at a time of each color. So I would do like 2 strands of white and then 2 strands of pink and then 2 strands of red. You could also totally mix it up. I'm not sure why I did a pattern, but that's just how I decided to do it. But that underlayer again is really important so that when your gnome's beard or your gnome's beard or hair moves, you don't see the underneath layer of the cup. Whoa, that was tough to say. So just do this all the way around, snipping as go to make sure that they fit. If you're going over and they're glued straight to the cup, it might be difficult for it to balance, so you want to make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom of the cup. And like I said, you don't have to do this in a pattern like I did. This is just the way that I chose to do it. Then you're going to go back around and start adding that like first actual beard layer before puffing it out just like we did similarly. Now I'm not doing it in a pattern this time. I'm just grabbing groups of strings, and these strings were a bit more messy than the mop strings were. As you can see, when I cut them, it just became this giant jumble. So I'm just grabbing a few different colored strings at a time and gluing them down in groups or clumps. Just like we did with the first gnome's beard, you are then going to go back to the area that you would consider the front and add an additional layer of those strings to really make it nice and full. And that way, when you're looking at it, at least from the front facing side, it's nice and thick, and you shouldn't see any of that cup bodice, if you will, underneath. Then when the beard is nice and full, you're going to do the same thing as before, kind of dangle it, see where you want the strings to fall. Again, keeping in mind how they fall in comparison to the cup so that they're not flopping all over the place. Now, I realized then in the front, because I was doing random bunches of strings, that they weren't very even, and this may or may not be bothersome to you, but I did add a few spare little red strings just to even out some of the color scheme and make it a little bit more cohesive looking. Now it's time to add our sock. This is just a plain gray sock from Dollar Tree. All the socks I got today from Dollar Tree. This is just a plain gray one because I thought, you know what, if you have a spare old one at home, or if you can't find like the other ones, just a plain colored sock will do well with something like a colorful beard like this. So I kind of inverted or folded in the insides, and now I'm using my scraps once again to stuff it. Now, I'm going to do this a few times because I had to measure out how full I needed it, whereas you can see here that it's still really boxy looking and too loose on top where the stuffing is. So you just want to stuff it until you're happy with it, and I really like this method because it's so much more resourceful than having to use an additional material when you can just use all your little scraps from all your yarn clippings. Now, you can totally mix and match any of these different ideas of the gnomes, of the different forms of beards, the different types of hats, some of the accessories. These are all just ideas to inspire you. If you make one of these, I would love to see it, and you can tag me on Instagram. As you can see there, I did just secure it in place with some hot glue. Now I'm using one of these little sparkly balls from a pack. These are, I think, supposed to be table scatter as well. Oh no, they're vase filler. But they have a Valentine's Day pack that comes with pink, white, and red, and I loved the red one for this. And I'm also using some red twine that was also in the Valentine's Day section from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to wrap it around my socks several times, almost like a little bit of a, you know those like, gosh, what am I saying? Like a fedora or a cowboy hat, and they have kind of like a braid around it or something. This is kind of that type of effect where it's got this little detail around the brim of the hat. By the way, those sparkly balls are my cat's new favorite toy. I have bought him real toys, but nope, he just loves to chase those and the sparkly pom-poms around, which is actually pretty funny, but also I'm going to stop buying him toys because he likes my craft supplies better. These felt hearts are also from Dollar Tree. This came in a 4-pack. This one came in a pack of 2 pastel pink and 2 magenta colors. There was also a 4-pack of just bright rosy red color. But I didn't end up liking the top of the hat with that black showing of the sock. It felt like it was too obvious that it was a sock, so I am kind of folding it into itself and using some hot glue in place. It does create a bit of a point for the top of the gnome, but I just preferred it better without that, like, stark, you know, sock toe area. Let me know what you guys think of this one. I think he turned out really, really cute. Alright, last but not least, we are making another gnome. I have already glued the 2 cups together because you've seen me do it twice. Now I'm using some white acrylic paint and a foam brush, and I am first brushing on some paint and then creating a texture just by dabbing, just by stippling or dabbing my brush all over it. And I'm creating this texture on purpose to somewhat mimic the fabric that I'm going to use on top for the beard. So again, I'm not just leaving it streaky, I'm putting streaks of it down, and then I'm kind of going over and just like pouncing my brush all over it to create somewhat of a texture, which you can see here. Ta-da! You're not going to see the top of the cup, so I just left that part as is. So while that dries, or after it dries, my mistake, I'm using this little mop head piece. This is in the cleaning section of Dollar Tree by like the mops and brooms. And I've heard that this is a nightmare to cut, and it was, but not as horrible as I thought. So I am just quite literally hot gluing it around right above the rim of where those 2 cups meet. And then I'm going to cut off the excess piece of it. This is where it gets hairy, literally. There's strings everywhere, but I just knew that this would make such a cute fluffy gnome, and it also felt a bit stiff, so I didn't want it to stay as one giant piece that's wrapped around the cups. So what I'm doing here is just cutting it into chunks, like every 2 inches apart or so. I'm just cutting chunks of strip. Look, can you see that? Look at all those crazy hairs. Good news is my ladybug vacuum was able to clean them all up. I will say it did get stuck once it was full of those little stringy hairs, so I do have to empty it, which you'll see here. It's kind of a hot mess. But then all I did was empty it, clean out the bristles a little bit, and it was good to go for another round. So if you want one of these, I will have it linked down in my description box below. And it also picked up all of the excess glitter from any glittery items I used. Here is our last pair of socks. By the way, I now have 3 mismatching socks that, to be honest, I don't know what to do with, and I don't want to make the same round of gnomes again, so, and they're all different shapes and sizes, so I can't just wear, like, mismatching socks. Although that's also one of my pet peeves, so I wouldn't do it anyways. But anyways, this sock I just pulled right on top. It was an ankle sock, so it was pretty short. And then I just secured it into place, and I'm just kind of folding in the heel a little bit so it's not quite as bulgy as it normally would be. Now I'm adding some more of these glitter heart table scatter to the front. I wanted to create kind of like a little headband look, which I thought would be cute. So I've got a large red heart in the middle, and then I glued 2 smaller ones to each side of the main middle heart. Now, I couldn't pick a nose for this one, and I wanted it to go with the color schemes of the other ones, so I actually ended up taking one of the white glitter balls and painting it loosely with some black acrylic paint, and then dusting it with some silver or holographic-ish type really, really fine cut glitter and rolling it around in there, and it became more of like a steel gray type of color, which I actually really liked, and I feel that it matched with it perfectly. Here you can see it up close a little. And so I just used that, waited for it to dry a minute or two, and then hot glued that right underneath my big main heart as the nose for this gnome. Now, to make this one even more different than the other ones, again, I want them each to have their own kind of quirky personalities or differences to give you great ideas. I fold it over the top of the sock, put a little hot glue on there, and then I hot glued a white pom-pom on the end, so he's got almost like a little Santa or elf hat type of going on, and I really think that added a nice touch and matches with the fluffy white beard. Now I'm going to show you the reveal photos of all 3 of these gnomes next to each other, and they are so much fun, and they're bringing so much character and personality to my living room. I absolutely love them. Let me know what you guys think down below, and I will see you in the next video on Tuesday. Thanks for watching. Bye.